Yes, the wait is finally over. After a cavalcade of motor show appearances, static reveals and teasers, we're finally getting behind the wheel of the M3 rivaling 503 brake horsepower Alfa Romeo Giulia Cloverleaf. Now, some people might have grown weary of the constant renaissance of this much-loved brand, but for now we're going to ignore that checkered past and concentrate on what's here and now, because this thing sat behind me looks pretty tasty indeed.
The standard Giulia might not be the prettiest car ever to wear an Alfa badge, but the Quadrifoglio version is a real thing of beauty with sleek proportions and understated menace. It's covered in high-performance jewellery, including an active carbon fibre front splitter and fixed rear spoiler, vents and power bulges down the bonnet, quad exhausts, and the most gorgeous set of 19-inch phone dial alloys we've ever seen. The rear diffuser looks like it came straight from a Ferrari, and there's even an optional carbon ceramic brake set too.
In here, I think Alfa Romeo has just about managed to match the drama of what's going on outside. The Cloverleaf, as standard, comes with these thickly bolstered leather and Alcantara seats, although you can get carbon buckets as an option if you prefer. The thin sports steering wheel houses a red starter button, and behind it sits these lovely long metal shift paddles for the 8-speed automatic transmission. That's the only option we'll have back in the UK, although other markets will get 4-wheel drive and 6-speed manual versions of the Quadrifoglio. There's good stuff in here too, like the lovely contrast stitching along the top of the leather-clad dash. There's a nice display screen hidden here behind the glass, and all the main touch points feel really nice. But lower down, there are a few surfaces, plastics and bits of switchgear that might feel slightly out of place on what will probably end up being a £60,000 car. Of course, none of that is going to matter at all if it's a riot to drive, and since we're here on a fairly wet track at Bolocco, I'll probably go and do just that.
Probably highest on our list of reasons to be rather excited about the Cloverleaf is its new engine. With twin turbos, a 2.9 litre capacity, and outputs of 503 brake horsepower and 443 pounds-feet of torque, it's one V6 that's not really messing around.
Now that translates to a 0 to 62 time of just 3.9 seconds and a claimed top speed of 190 miles an hour, which are pretty serious numbers. Now, the truth is, out here on the test track, it's never actually felt that fast. It just doesn't quite feel like a 500 brake horsepower car. The gearbox really whips through the ratios, builds speed gradually rather than pushing you right into the back of your seat.
Alfa Romeo actually borrowed key engineers from Ferrari and Maserati when developing this engine, and it's quite clever too. It's got cylinder deactivation technology, which means it makes a respectable 34.4 mpg and around 189 grams per kilometre of CO2, which puts it on a par with the BMW M3 and Mercedes-AMG C63. We've also driven the diesel, which will be the big seller, and you can read a full review of that by clicking the I button at the top of the screen. Right, back to the Quadrifoglio then.
You've got all the usual different driving modes to play with efficiency, normal and dynamic, but that last one is certainly a step up. The gear changes get a lot faster, the suspension stiffens up slightly, and also the engine response is increased. It sounds good too. It's not quite the oral fireworks that you get in the Mercedes C63 AMG, but there's a real depth of sound to the exhaust notes from those quad pipes that will certainly embarrass an M3, that's for sure. The steering is really light and quick, which is a combination that you don't normally get in modern cars. It darts into corners quite quickly, and in dynamic mode it'll let you have a little bit of slip from the rear axle just to let you know you're in something rear-wheel drive before the ESP cuts in actually fairly aggressively, and it'll also cut down on the power as well. There is a final driving mode too down here called Race. If you engage that, you get a much raughtier exhaust note, and all the systems are turned off, so you need to be awake, particularly on a wet surface and on these aggressive Pirelli tyres. Overall though, I've got to say I've been pretty impressed from our time here on track in the Cloverleaf. It feels like there's a real depth of engineering going on. It feels like a lighter car than most of its rivals, and that helps it feel nimble. There's also a very clever dual clutch rear diff that helps push the torque around at the back, and that makes it surprisingly predictable on the limit, which is definitely what you want. It feels pointy and agile, and although we haven't been able to drive it on the road today, I'm now really looking forward to the prospect, because this feels like a very good car indeed.